Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're digging into something pretty concerning happening in South Korea, specifically the accommodation and food service sector.
That's right. Recent reports are showing, well, a really tough time for them.
Yeah, it looks like a downturn that's been going on for almost 2 years now. Apparently the longest slump on record for this sector.
It really is quite stark. Nearly 2 years. That's significant. It's not just a blip.
Definitely not. And for a major economy, seeing such a key domestic-facing industry struggle like this, it makes you ask, what's really going on underneath?
Absolutely. And the core issue seems to be persistently weak domestic demand. People just aren't spending in restaurants or on accommodation like they used to.
Okay, so weak demand. What's driving that? The reports mention consumer sentiment is pretty low.
Yeah, that seems key. It looks like a combination of factors. Things like ongoing trade tensions, particularly with the U.S.
Right, the tariffs and that uncertainty.
Exactly. And also internal factors, like political instability within South Korea itself. It all contributes to people feeling less confident.
And when people feel uncertain, they hold back on spending.
Yeah.
Especially discretionary stuff.
Precisely. Eating out, maybe a short trip.
Yeah.
Those are often the first things people cut back on when they're worried about the economy or, the political situation. It's understandable.
And the numbers back this up, right? There's this production index.
A key measure of output.
And it's been falling pretty much continuously since mid-2023.
That's right. There was a brief moment early this year, early 2024 actually, where it was flat, but otherwise it's been a steady decline.
And the levels now are comparable to the pandemic, even after things were supposed to be recovering.
That's what's quite alarming. We're talking levels similar to when everything was locked down, despite the post-COVID reopening. It suggests the recovery, at least in this sector, hasn't really held.
Wow. And it got worse at the start of this year, 2025.
It did. A really sharp contraction month on month. Government officials were pointing to, more uncertainty. Things like political turmoil, constitutional issues, even mentioning a specific airline accident as affecting sentiment.
So it's quite sensitive to these kinds of events.
Very sensitive. It shows how fragile consumer confidence can be.
Is it hitting all parts of the sector equally? Or are there differences?
There are differences. The reports indicate food services are being hit particularly hard. Accommodation services seem to be doing, relatively better, but still not great.
Food services. That makes me think about small businesses, the self-employed.
Exactly. That's a major concern. The food service industry relies heavily on self-employed individuals, restaurant owners, small cafes.
So when that sector struggles,
it directly impacts those small business owners. And we're seeing reports of record numbers of closures, especially restaurants and eateries. It's a really difficult situation for them.
That's tough. And looking forward, does it seem like things might improve soon?
Well, the outlook isn't exactly rosy. There's more potential political uncertainty coming up, talk of an early presidential election.
Right. And the trade stuff with the U.S. isn't resolved.
Not at all. So economists are worried consumer confidence might stay weak or even worsen.
Leading to that cycle you sometimes see. Less spending, businesses close, jobs are lost.
Precisely. A negative feedback loop. Weak demand leads to closures, which means job losses, which further dampens spending. It's hard to break out of that.
And there was a point from an economic research director about existing pressures.
Yes, pointing out that high interest rates and inflation were already squeezing consumers before these recent issues really intensified.
So households were already under pressure.
Right. And the worry is that any additional shocks, external or internal, could really push things over the edge, especially in these sectors like food service, where so many self-employed people work. It makes business investment and hiring look very risky.
Okay, so just to recap then, we're looking at a prolonged, deepening slump in South Korea's accommodation and food services.
Driven by weak domestic demand, shaky consumer confidence.
Yeah, influenced by both global trade worries and internal political factors.
And hitting the self-employed particularly hard, raising concerns about this ongoing negative cycle.
It really shows how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? Even a sector that feels very domestic.
It really does.
Yeah.
Global events, national politics, they filter right down to whether someone decides to, grab dinner out.
So maybe a final thought then. Thinking about how linked economies are now, what can we learn from South Korea's situation here about how resilient, or maybe not so resilient, these domestic industries really are when faced with both global and local shocks?
That's a great question to ponder. How vulnerable are these seemingly local sectors to wider turbulence? It's definitely something worth watching, not just in Korea, but elsewhere too.
Indeed. Plenty to think about there. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.